What's up, friends, and welcome back to my channel. So I love coffee. I don't care if it's hot, iced, bulletproofed, or black. If it looks like coffee and it tastes like coffee, then I'm pretty much all about it. But about 6 months ago, I developed a chronic cough every single time I drank it. I was ready to give up coffee for good until I realized it probably wasn't the coffee, it was the mold. And so that sent me down this crazy rabbit hole of looking into where are your beans from? How are they stored? Did they use pesticides on the soil? And how clean is your coffee maker? And so even though I did a lot of research and will share with you what I've learned, I'm still no expert, but I do know a couple people who are. So in this video, I'm gonna take you for a tour around one of the world's most prestigious coffee regions to a small organic coffee farm that's actually doing things right. And I'm going to show you how to brew the perfect cup of coffee. And for all my coffee lovers out there, make sure you stick around to the very end of this video for my special coffee giveaway so you can enjoy a little slice of Kona coffee heaven for yourself. But first, if you're new here, welcome. My mission is to help you achieve success without sacrificing your health or happiness. I do product reviews weekly, so if you're into this, click that subscribe button and join the Type A tribe. So as a quick preface, I am not planning to cover any of the health benefits or potential side effects of coffee in this particular video. This video is really intended to be more of a step-by-step guide for coffee drinkers to really know what to look for when it comes to sourcing your beans, preparing, brewing, and even storing your beans so that you are always getting the healthiest and highest quality cup of coffee possible. So that being said, let's start with the beans themselves. So as I mentioned before, a couple of months ago, I developed this really nasty and chronic cough that only happened every time I drank a cup of coffee. Of course, I ignored it at first, but then I did switch up my beans and I started to scale back my coffee consumption, but the problem didn't go away. So of course I went to the doctor and they gave me a prescription for acid reflux, but spoiler alert, it wasn't acid reflux. The prescription didn't work because the problem was only happening after I drank coffee. I mean, I was pretty freaking frustrated at this point, but this was also around the time that we moved to Kona, Hawaii. And it was shortly after moving here, I started drinking the local coffee, and just like that, the cough mysteriously went away. So now I was way more confused, but my interest was piqued and I had to know what is so special about this coffee. And so I hit up Tree, which is one of my favorite organic coffee farms on the island, to find out what they were doing differently.
Kona in general, it just has a really good climate for it. As you can see, it's raining behind us. But coffee is like one of the most heavily sprayed crops in the planet. So being organic is not exactly easy, but it's definitely worth it.
Now that was my friend Kat Keith, who is pretty much the jack of all trades at Tree. And she has spent the last 5 years on the farm, pretty much touching every single part of the coffee making process. So she knows a lot about Kona coffee and its susceptibility to things like mold. Now, prior to our discussion, I had looked into some of the potential dangers of mold toxicity in coffee. I'd heard there's kind of a little bit of a debate in the coffee world about how severe the issue is, but I think it's fair to say that there's enough evidence to show that there really is this kind of one toxin called Mycotoxin A that seems to kind of be the biggest offender when it comes to mold toxicity in coffee. And so what it is a very specific type of mold that can actually grow on coffee beans themselves if they're either A, not dried properly, or B, they were processed in these low quality facilities that weren't clean and didn't use proper storage techniques. Now, granted, not everyone that's exposed to these are going to have a reaction to them, but for those that do, some of the symptoms can include things like IBS, chronic fatigue, brain fog, or even allergies and other histamine-related reactions. Now, I didn't get my blood tested, so I can't say for certain that it was moldy beans that were the problem. Maybe it was my coffee machine or a combination of both. But regardless, the bigger issue here is that there's really no universal testing or standard for regulating the levels of Mycotoxin A in coffee. Some countries do, some countries don't. Now, the optimist in me would like to believe that even the cheapest bag of beans that you can find in your supermarket are only going to contain very trace amounts of it, but there's really no way to be sure unless they test for it. Or you know exactly where your beans came from and all the processes involved in harvesting, drying, and roasting. After all, a huge part of preventing mold in the first place happens pretty early on in the stage of coffee harvesting. And so there are really two big factors to look for when buying your coffee to kind of mitigate this toxin risk. Number one, are these single estate beans? Or did they mix them and match them from other farms? Because that could potentially lead to contamination. And number two, did they use wet processing? And this is basically when they remove the fruit from the beans right before drying. And so in the case of Holly Tree Farms, the answer to both of these questions is yes.
So after we pick, we take it to our processing facility at our 40-acre farm, and that's what we call the wet milling process. So we run it through machinery to remove the fruit on the outside. Depending on the type of coffee we're doing, we do different types of fermentation or lack of fermentation to give us different profiles for the coffee. And whatever we choose for the processing, it goes on to the drying stage afterwards.
And unlike a lot of coffee farms out here in Kona and probably elsewhere in the world that rely heavily on deck drying, Holly Tree takes a different approach when it comes to getting the moisture out of the beans.
The machine drying is nice because I'm able to dial it in more to a schedule instead of just being reliant on the sunshine. And so rather than it sitting on the deck for 1 to 3 weeks, it only sits for about a day or two before I put it in the dryer, and then it's finished in 1 to 3 days. And I mean, I'm sitting there running the dryers for 20 hours a day, but at least we're getting it in and out in the right time frame to prevent that mold and mildew from taking hold.
So as you can see, a bulk of this heavy lifting to prevent mold really happens during the early stages of the harvesting and the processing. But what about storage? And we'll first look at it from the farm perspective, but then I'm going to talk about how you can properly store your beans at home. So after they finish up drying their beans, Holly Tree then takes those beans and stores them in parchment until they're ready for roasting. Unlike a lot of the big brands out there whose coffee may have been sitting on your supermarket shelf for months at a time, Holly Tree only roasts their coffee when a batch is ordered.
Small batch roasting. That way we know that we don't have it sitting on the shelf for more than a week before it's sold. So, and us being the size that we are, we're able to overlook every step of the process and know that it's the best that it can be.
It also always comes in whole bean form, never pre-ground. And my favorite part, which is very nerdy and kind of reminds me of an episode of Portlandia, is that you could actually read about the whole bean's life cycle, where it was grown, what the elevation was like, how it was roasted, when it was roasted. All of that information can be found when you scan the QR code on the back of every bag of beans. Now, I think that's really cool stuff, and it's in this level of attention to detail that I think really sets certain farms like Holly Tree apart from the rest of this very saturated coffee space. But the good news is that no matter where you are in the world, there are plenty of places that are doing work like this and really setting new standards for coffee quality across the board. You just have to know what you're looking for before you buy. Now, Holly Tree obviously is one of them, but I will include a number of other brands in this space for you guys to check out in the show notes below. So, to quickly recap some of the things that are really important to look for when you're buying a bag of beans. Number one is, were your bag of beans grown with or without pesticides? And even though the organic label might vary from place to place, usually it is a pretty safe bet, even more so if you can find Fair Trade or even Rainforest Alliance. A lot of those labels can help inform your decision. And of course, you can always go to the source, check out the website, and really see what they do to take care of mold, mildew, and pests. Number two, know where your beans are harvested from. Were they single estate? Were they mixed with other farms? And what type of processing did they use? Number three, find out how the company dries their beans, how they store it, and then what the overall shelf life is for every bag you get. And last but not least, when it comes to preparing your coffee at home, I have a couple of suggestions based on my own personal experience. Most importantly, is you want to make sure you are cleaning whatever coffee machine you are using pretty regularly. There's a lot of moisture that builds up in these machines when they get heated, and that can lead to excess bacteria, mildew, mold, etc. So clean your machines. And for me, I'm actually avoiding all of those machines with like pre-built grinders in them. I love the idea in theory, but man, those are really hard to clean. And I think not certain, but I think that some bacteria or mold got into my old one, and that also maybe had contributed to my cough. So I'm staying away from those. Basically what I do now is use a paper filter. I grind my beans fresh pretty much every single day. Once I get my beans, I store them in a mason jar, or I actually have this really cool thing called the coffee gator. It was a little expensive, but keeps everything fresh, keeps the air out, and that's what you want. I'm not gonna really talk a lot about the K-cup thing or Nespresso pods. I mean, I've tried both and I love them because they're convenient, but man, they're probably not very fresh. And they're also terrible for the environment because of all that plastic stuff. But I'm not gonna really dwell on this. You guys live your own life, you make your own decisions. I'm just the messenger. And so that's all I'm gonna say about those for now. So guys, if you have stuck around for this long, well, then you are awesome and I love you. But this is also the special coffee giveaway announcement, and I am going to be giving away 2 bags of my personal favorite bags of beans from Hollow Tree. Basically, rules for entering is super simple. Leave me a comment. I will pick a winner at random next Friday, May 28th. And then I will announce it on this channel the following Friday, whatever that is. I don't have a calendar in front of me. So if you want to win, if you want to enter, just leave a comment. It's that simple. Not making it hard these days. Thank you. And yes, if you want, we could also do a little Zoom chat of drinking coffee together. If that's not weird, might be weird. Maybe I'll just cut that part out. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you learned something, if you liked this video, please make sure you leave me a comment below, or if you just don't want to comment because you don't want to be part of the giveaway, then you can just hit me up on my DM at KatieTypeA, or you can also email me, and all that stuff is on my website, katietypea.com. Make sure to subscribe, to like, to hit that bell, all the things. I can't wait to catch you on the next one. I think I drank a little too much coffee today. So, my legs are kind of bothering me. I think my foot fell asleep. Oh God, oh, my foot fell asleep. Oh. You know when your foot falls asleep and then you're like, I can't feel my legs.